The top 1% of dating coaches know a secret that psychologists discovered in laboratories decades ago, and they've weaponized it to create obsessive attraction. This technique is so powerful that casinos have built billion-dollar empires on the exact same principle. It's called intermittent reinforcement, and right now, whether you know it or not, you're either the victim or the master of this psychological trap. Your ex doesn't keep coming back because they love you. They come back because their brain is literally wired like a slot machine, and you're the jackpot they can't stop chasing. Today, I'm going to show you the clinical, scientific breakdown of why uncertainty is 400% more addictive than consistency. By the end of this video, you'll understand the exact neurochemical process happening in your ex's brain, and more importantly, how to never fall for this trap again. In 1953, behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner conducted an experiment that would accidentally reveal the most powerful force in human relationships. He placed pigeons in boxes with a button that dispensed food. But here's where it gets interesting. Some pigeons received food every single time they pressed the button, while others received food randomly and unpredictably. The pigeons who received food every time quickly learned the pattern and pressed the button only when hungry. But the pigeons on the random schedule became obsessed, pressing the button compulsively, frantically, even when they weren't hungry. They couldn't stop. This is intermittent reinforcement, and your ex's brain is operating on the exact same algorithm. When you were consistently available, their brain registered the pattern and relaxed. But the moment you became unpredictable, their dopamine system went into overdrive. Let's talk about what's actually happening in the brain during intermittent reinforcement, because this is where the magic or the manipulation occurs. When your ex receives inconsistent responses from you, their ventral tegmental area floods with dopamine, the same neurotransmitter released during cocaine use. But here's the critical distinction. Consistent rewards produce a predictable dopamine spike that quickly normalizes. Unpredictable rewards create a sustained state of anticipatory dopamine that keeps the brain in constant seeking mode. Neuroscientist Dr. Robert Sapolsky found that the dopamine response to uncertainty is 400% higher than the response to guaranteed rewards. Your ex isn't addicted to you, they're addicted to the not knowing. Every unanswered text, every mixed signal, every moment of uncertainty triggers a neurochemical cascade that's more powerful than actual connection. This is why the healthy relationship you built felt boring to them and why they left. Consistency creates what psychologists call hedonic adaptation, the brain's tendency to return to baseline happiness, regardless of positive circumstances. When you were always available, always supportive, always there, their brain adapted and stopped producing those intense neurochemical highs. The relationship became predictable, and predictability is the enemy of dopamine. So they left, searching for novelty, for excitement, for that electric feeling of uncertainty. But here's the trap they walked into. The moment they left, you became unpredictable. Your availability became uncertain. Your responses became intermittent. And suddenly, their brain lit up like a Christmas tree. This is the exact moment the intermittent reinforcement schedule began, and this is why they can't stay away. Let me show you the 4-stage cycle that keeps your ex trapped in this loop, because understanding the pattern is the first step to breaking it. Stage 1 is the departure. They leave because the consistent reward schedule has become predictable and unstimulating. Stage 2 is the withdrawal. Initially, they feel relief and excitement about their freedom. Stage 3 is the dopamine crash. Within days or weeks, their brain starts craving the lost source of reward, but more importantly, craving the uncertainty of whether they can get it back. Stage 4 is the return. They reach out, test the waters, see if you're still available. If you respond inconsistently, you've just reinforced the behavior. If you respond immediately and consistently, you've reset them back to hedonic adaptation. Either way, you're trapped in the cycle unless you understand the neuroscience behind it. The gambling industry has perfected intermittent reinforcement to the point where they can predict, with mathematical precision, how long someone will stay at a slot machine. They've discovered that a 30% win rate keeps people engaged longer than a 50% win rate. Why? Because too much success becomes predictable, while too much failure causes abandonment. The sweet spot is just enough wins to maintain hope, mixed with enough losses to maintain uncertainty. Your ex is operating on the same algorithm. Every time you respond warmly, that's a win. Every time you're cold or distant, that's a loss. If you're consistent in either direction, they'll eventually adapt and leave. But if you're unpredictable, if you maintain that 30% sweet spot, you become the most addictive slot machine they've ever encountered. This isn't love, this is behavioral conditioning, and it's happening on a neurological level completely separate from conscious choice. Now let's discuss why this pattern is so prevalent with exes specifically, and why it doesn't happen as intensely with new relationships. When your ex was with you, their brain built a complete neural map of your reward schedule. They have historical data on your patterns, your responses, your availability. When they return after a breakup, they're trying to access that familiar reward system, but now the schedule has changed. You're no longer the predictable partner they left. You've become a variable they can't calculate. Additionally, the act of leaving created what psychologists call a sunk cost bias. They've invested significant time, emotion, and energy into this relationship. Their brain is trying to rationalize that investment by seeking validation that it wasn't wasted. Every time they come back and you engage, even negatively, you're validating their investment and reinforcing their behavior. This is why no contact is so psychologically powerful. It completely removes the reinforcement schedule. Here's where it gets even more fascinating. The timing of their returns isn't random. There's a predictable pattern based on extinction burst theory. When a previously reinforced behavior stops producing rewards, the subject doesn't immediately give up. Instead, they increase the frequency and intensity of the behavior in what's called an extinction burst. Your ex will reach out more desperately, more emotionally, more frequently when you first implement no contact. They're experiencing what gamblers feel when a slot machine stops paying out. They don't walk away, they press the button harder and faster. Dr. Amy Banks, neuroscientist and relationship expert, explains that this burst can last anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the strength of the original conditioning. If you break no contact during this extinction burst, you've just created a more powerful intermittent reinforcement schedule than before. You've taught them that if they just try harder, you'll eventually respond. The clinical term for what your ex is experiencing is operant conditioning with variable ratio reinforcement. And it's the same mechanism that creates gambling addicts, social media addiction, and compulsive checking behaviors. Variable ratio means they can't predict when the reward will come, only that it might come if they keep trying. This is neurologically distinct from variable interval reinforcement, where rewards come after unpredictable time periods. Ratio reinforcement is more powerful because it creates the illusion of control. Your ex believes that if they just say the right thing, reach out at the right time, or push the right emotional buttons, they'll get the response they're seeking. Research from the National Institute of Mental Health shows that variable ratio schedules create the strongest resistance to extinction. Translation: this pattern is incredibly difficult to break without conscious intervention and understanding of the underlying mechanism. Let me give you a real-world case study that perfectly illustrates this principle. A client of mine, we'll call her Sarah, had an ex who left her for someone else after a 3-year relationship. For the first month, Sarah begged and pleaded, consistent behavior that produced consistent rejection. Her ex's brain registered this pattern and felt validated in his decision to leave. Then Sarah implemented complete no contact. Within 2 weeks, her ex started reaching out, first casually, then more emotionally, then desperately. What changed? The reinforcement schedule. When Sarah was consistently available, even in desperation, his brain had no reason to seek her attention. But when she became completely unavailable, she shifted from a guaranteed loss to an uncertain possibility. His dopamine system, trained on the reward pattern they'd established over 3 years, went into overdrive trying to resolve the uncertainty. 6 weeks later, he was begging to come back, not because he'd realized he loved her, but because his brain couldn't handle the unresolved variable. Now here's the critical question. How do you break free from this cycle, whether you're the one being conditioned or the one unconsciously doing the conditioning? First, you must recognize that intermittent reinforcement only works when there's still hope of a reward. Complete permanent removal of the possibility is the only way to extinguish the behavior. This means no breadcrumbs, no just friends arrangements, no periodic check-ins. Second, you need to understand that the intense feelings you or your ex are experiencing aren't love. They're dopamine-driven seeking behavior. Love is consistent, stable, and secure. Addiction is intense, unpredictable, and anxiety-inducing. If your relationship felt like an emotional roller coaster, you weren't experiencing deep connection. You were experiencing intermittent reinforcement. Third, rebuild your reward system around consistent, healthy sources. Your brain needs to learn that predictable care and stable connection are more valuable than unpredictable intensity. The final piece of this puzzle is understanding the long-term neurological damage that intermittent reinforcement creates in relationships. When your brain is repeatedly subjected to unpredictable rewards and punishments, it begins to prefer chaos over stability. Dr. Amir Levine, author of Attached, explains that this conditioning can actually reshape your attachment style, training you to feel more attracted to unavailable partners and bored by secure ones. You become addicted to the dopamine hits of uncertainty rather than the oxytocin of genuine bonding. This is why people often report feeling more chemistry with toxic partners than healthy ones. They're confusing neurochemical addiction with compatibility. Breaking this pattern requires conscious reconditioning of your reward system. You need to actively notice and appreciate the small, consistent acts of care in healthy relationships, training your brain to value security over intensity. This process takes time, typically 90 to 180 days of consistent new patterns, but it's the only way to break free from the slot machine of intermittent reinforcement and build genuine, lasting love. Understanding intermittent reinforcement doesn't just explain why your ex keeps coming back. It reveals the entire hidden architecture of modern dating and relationship dysfunction. You now know that the most intense feelings aren't always the most meaningful, that uncertainty creates addiction rather than connection, and that your brain can be conditioned to crave chaos over stability. The question isn't whether your ex will come back. The question is whether you'll recognize their return for what it really is, not love, but a conditioned response to an unpredictable reward schedule. Use this knowledge to build relationships based on secure attachment, consistent care, and genuine compatibility rather than neurochemical addiction. Break the cycle, retrain your reward system, and never confuse the slot machine effect for real love again. If this video changed how you see your relationships, share it with someone who needs to understand the science behind their pain.